Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while since I made a video, so I'm going to be making a couple today. So I'm just going to introduce my candle and tea once, and then link to the other video, this video in subsequent videos. And we're going to be talking about a bunch of different stuff today. So I'm going to start with what I'm drinking and what I'm burning. So the candle that I'm burning today is the Village Candle 3-wick with the scent Tranquility. It's a lovely blue candle. The 3 wicks kind of help for the ambiance, plus melting it faster so more scent happens. And then what I'm drinking today in my lovely blue mug is a Raspberry Rose Oolong by Tea Head. And it's a loose leaf tea, but I've got it in a steeper bag so that I can, make the tea. It smells really good, and it tastes very good. It smells a lot more like raspberry and tastes like a very soft rose flavor. So, books. The first book that we are going to be talking about today is not really a book so much as a subset of a book series. So, very recently, I finished up reading the 4th book in Rick Riordan's Trials of Apollo series, which is called The Tyrant's Tomb. There's the full cover for you. As you can see, I got the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition, which had a really lovely bit of bonus material, both a preview of the Camp Jupiter Classified, a Probaccio's journal, and this really gorgeous poster of the inside of the Tyrant's Tomb, which I am absolutely obsessed with as a poster and need to frame and put in my room. So overall, I can't really talk about this book without talking about the rest of the series. So I am going to go through all of Rick Riordan's books in these next few videos. So this one is going to start with the kind of Greek-Roman series, which is actually 3 intermixed series. So this is going to be quite a long video. And then in my next one, we're going to talk about my other favorite Rick Riordan series, which is based around Egyptian mythology and is called the Kane Chronicles. Sadly, I don't have any of those books in print, only in ebook form, so I can't hold those up in that video. Or no. In terms of Rick Riordan, he has 3 series that make up his Greco-Roman books. So the first one is the Percy Jackson series, which most people are familiar with. I have the first 3 books in paperback and the next 2 in ebook. I picked up Percy Jackson for the first time when I was in middle school and absolutely loved it. It immediately was one of my favorite series that I had ever read, up there with Harry Potter. A super engaging main character in Percy and supporting characters that became main characters in Annabeth and Grover and a lot of the other people at camp, and a really cool approach to getting kids interested in mythology, and I got bit by the bug. And so I read the first Percy Jackson books, all 5, and then around the time when I was finishing them was when the next part of the series started coming out, and Rick Riordan published the Heroes of Olympus series. And these books, I own the first 2 in hardcover, the first of which I was actually gifted by a woman who taught with my mom in 2010. And so the first book in the Heroes of Olympus is The Lost Hero. This kind of kickstarts the whole idea of the Romans. You don't really get anything about the Roman camp in this book, but it's where the idea of how new demigods that aren't Percy get to camp kind of starts to come to light, and this idea of who is Jason and why is he different. You see a lot of really neat hints that start leading towards the Roman camp. which you appreciate much more upon each reread as an older individual who has read the books already. It's got really engaging new characters that come to light in Jason Grace, Piper McLean, and Leo Valdez. And the diversity really starts to jump out with these books. You start to see that now that Riordan has made a name for himself as an author and has started to push the bounds of what Disney will allow, he already has this contract, so he starts incorporating a lot of diversity that you see come up in his more recent series, especially, I've been told, in the Magnus Chase series. So in this book, Jason is white, but Piper is of Native American heritage, and Leo is Hispanic and speaks Spanish and spoke mostly a mixture of Spanish and English with his mother before she passed away. So it's a really cool way to start incorporating the idea that demigods aren't all just one picture of male whiteness, even though from the beginning there was diversity with all of the demigods having ADHD and dyslexia, and incorporating that element of sort of mental differentness, and the idea of, if not, because not everybody classifies that as a disability, but the idea of not being all the perfect image of what a lot of protagonists in young reader and young adult books are. So I really enjoyed this book, but I've always felt one way, which is that I feel like the first two books in the Heroes of Olympus series would have done much better being flipped in order. So the second book is The Son of Neptune, and this follows Percy's journey of arriving at the Roman camp without any real memories of who he is or where he came from, just some vague bits and pieces of memories of Annabeth, his half-brother Tyson, and his name. And his name and a little bit about the camp. For me, as much as I love the story of Jason and Piper and Leo, I feel like these books might have hooked more people and been more successful if they had started with The Son of Neptune and then moved into The Lost Hero, and if he had flipped the timelines, because everybody was already invested in Percy as a protagonist at the time that this series was coming out, because they had read the Percy Jackson books. If you were picking up the Heroes of Olympus, you were generally already a Percy Jackson fan. So you were invested in Percy, you knew about Percy. So to immediately start with the protagonist still being Percy, and then introducing the idea of this Roman camp and these new characters, would have been, I think, a better way, rather than introducing 3 brand new characters who aren't starting off at Camp Half-Blood. So you're starting off completely in an unknown place with unknown people who you don't really care about. And you're getting these bits and pieces of Jason not remembering who he was, but you're not getting any threads that tie you to who he might be, because you don't know anything about the Romans yet. If you were to flip that and start with a familiar character in an unfamiliar place, and then you learn about the Romans, and then you jump into, oh, these other new characters, and well, which camp are they going to go to? And, oh, Coach Hedge is very obviously from Camp Half-Blood, so they must be Greeks. And then Jason doesn't know who he is, and you see all these signs of him being Roman with the purple and the SPQR and all of this. You would understand those ties better if they were placed the opposite way. But the series as a whole is a really nice way of marrying these Greco-Roman mythological intersections while giving you a whole host of characters to be able to identify with, bringing in more diversity with your Chinese, Canadian, American character of Frank Zhang, and the backgrounds that interweave for him with his Chinese heritage and his Canadianness, and trying to be a Roman, and also now suddenly living in America as a teenager whose mom just died in war. And that is a really cool level. And then you get one of my favorite characters in the form of Hazel Levesque. And Hazel is this whip-smart, fierce, young African-American girl from New Orleans. And she's a very complicated character with a very heavy backstory and a lot that interweaves into the story of Son of Neptune. And you really get to start pushing the bounds, and in this series you find out more about Nico, and Nico comes out, and you get all of these characters who aren't just one thing and are a complicated mess who love each other and fight to save the world. And that's one of my favorite things about the idea of the Percy Jackson series. So I had read both series, and then when I found out about the Trials of Apollo series, I was immediately excited because it was still within the universe of Camp Half-Blood and the Greco-Romans, but without focusing on a perspective that we'd already kind of heard a lot about, which was the demigod perspective of these characters that we knew and loved. And so I picked up the first book in ebook form and absolutely loved it. And then kind of forgot about the series for a while because at the time that these books were coming out, I was finishing high school and just starting college, and a lot was changing in my life, and it wasn't really a time when I had time to read, which is one of the things that I kind of regret about that time of my life, is not reading as much as I would like to. And then I was strolling through the bookstore at my college campus, and I came upon a discounted hardcover edition of the second book, The Dark Prophecy, which immediately has such a beautiful cover, and this dust jacket is one of my favorites. From the front being beautiful, but also then just the griffin's face on the side is a really neat kind of way to sell a book. And so I bought it because it was on sale, and I was like, oh wow, I really liked the first one, The Hidden Oracle, so this would be a great book for me to try and pick back up into reading. And I read it and I loved it, and then I got busy again. And so I got the third one on my e-reader and read that a few months after it came out. And then recently, oh no, I didn't get the third one on my e-reader. What am I thinking? It's just not here. It's at school. I got behind and I didn't get the third one or the fourth one. And then I found out that the fourth one was coming out, and I was like, oh my god, I didn't even read the third one. So this year for Christmas, I got the paperback of the third one and the hardcover copy of the fourth book, and read both of them over Christmas break into January, February, March, and just got the chance to finish the fourth one right at the end of March. And I absolutely love this series. I think it hits all of the beautiful high points of the previous Percy Jackson and Heroes of Olympus series, and you get some really nice nods towards characters you already know and love with their incorporation throughout the story, but you get this new perspective of Apollo and what it's like to not have any powers and be in this world and kind of trapped in your own body to a certain extent. And he really learns and grows in a way that you don't see with a lot of the other protagonists, because they're already starting off at the point of being a confused teenager or young adult, 12, 13, 14, 15, and not really knowing what they're doing, but at the same time knowing that they need to be heroes. Where you're picking up on Apollo as kind of an arrogant asshole god who's been sent to Earth for being an asshole. And you get to watch him learn how to be a hero without being a demigod and without being a god, and basically being this human Lester with just relying on friendship and the power of that. And so I think it's a really beautiful series for everyone to read. It's great for young adults. I think it's done a really good job of being a series that you can pick up without having read Percy Jackson or the Heroes of Olympus, and you wouldn't feel too lost. The nods to previous characters are incorporated in such a way that the characters are reintroduced so that you don't feel like you're missing something, like you should know this person and you don't. Which I really like, because a lot of new readers might see the series come out and pick it up and not necessarily know Percy Jackson or the backstory there, because those books came out so long ago at this point. I mean, it's 2020. I got the first in the Heroes of Olympus given to me in 2010. So if you think about when the original Percy Jackson series came out, it's been over a decade. A lot of the target demographic of these young adult novels weren't born yet when the first books were coming out, or were very young. So they wouldn't necessarily have been exposed to it in the same way. And this book series with Trials of Apollo is a nice introduction to this world. And going back and reading Percy Jackson and the Heroes of Olympus after reading Apollo would just make things make more sense. They wouldn't confuse you. And I think Riordan did a really good job with that. And that aspect of tying everything together in a way that doesn't feel forced. So that's kind of my whole spiel on the overarching Greco-Roman Rick Riordan Percy Jackson related series. And, you know, when I was reading this fourth book, it was a nice feel of nostalgia for me. But I could also see how for a new reader it would just be exciting and like something they'd never read before. So if you're a person that hasn't read Percy Jackson and you've made it this far, I've spoiled a little bit for you, and I'm sorry about that with some of the reveals that come out. But also at this point, it's been in the general zeitgeist for so long that you've probably encountered some of these spoilers on the internet, even if you didn't know what they were relating to. And I highly push you to go and read this series, and if you've read the first ones but you never pushed to the second or to the Trials of Apollo, but you really liked Percy Jackson, I really recommend that you keep going for it, because they are such beautiful books. And if you are a reader who's fallen out of reading, like I was, it's a nice reintroduction to what you love about reading, and like what gets you to be a reader when you're in middle school can still get you to be a reader when you're older. And honestly, readers of any age can appreciate the Percy Jackson series. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you can give it a like, leave a comment if you have any advice for me about future videos, if you have any books you really think I should read, or any series you want to get more opinions on from me. I will link the at the end of this video my video on Kane Chronicles, so that if you want, you can give that a watch as well. And I hope that you enjoy, and if you like my content, feel free to subscribe. Thanks, guys.